Hi, I'm Van King. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to take stacked images and how to process them. I'll take 3 different images using 3 different lenses. I'll use the same computer program and show you the results of it. It'll be the actual practical way of doing your stacking of images. Presumably you have looked at previous videos in this series, you have the equipment ready, you're just wanting to take pictures, you've probably experimented some, and I'll try to fill in some of the details and some of the pitfalls that you will want to be aware of as you're taking photographs. The screen over here is hooked up to the camera. It shows exactly what you will be capturing in each image frame. The field of view you can see from the top is just about 4.5 centimeters, just a tiny bit more. One of the things you have to remember is whatever your field of view is, it's going to be smaller because your camera is moving, it's changing the relative position to the object, and some of the image is getting off image area and won't be usable when you're stacking. That part of the image will be an artifact, or it will be just merely clipped depending on the kind of computer program you use. So you have to give yourself a reasonable amount of border in the image area so you don't lose it. The ruler is perpendicular to the axis of the lens, so you're seeing equal amounts of focus in the ruler. When you're checking out your specimen setup, before you take any pictures, you have to know how deep is your depth of field. Let me change the orientation of the ruler so you can see that. We have a small object here, and instead of having the ruler perpendicular to the axis, I'm going to have it at about a 45-degree angle. And when we move this into the field of view, about 45 degrees, we see that on the right-hand side of the monitor at 11, there's reasonably sharp focus. As you go to the left, 10 is beginning to be fuzzy, 9 is definitely out of focus. For this lens, in this setup, then you probably have a useful 1/2 centimeter of sharp depth of field. And that's important, because when you take a stacked set of images, you need places where sharp depth of field overlaps, because the program will take what's coming from the camera and choose the sharpest places. And if there are gaps in sharpness, you'll have a fuzzy band. And if you do it poorly, you may even have alternating sharp focus, fuzzy focus in your images. So get a feeling for what is the depth of field of any particular image. That means my increments, taking a picture, the next picture is going to be 1/4 of a centimeter, 2.5 millimeters. And that's a fairly large distance as far as using precise stacking is concerned. Get it at sharp focus. And note that even though this is fixed on a little mount, this little object is on a movable piece of black background. And what I want to do is get relatively close to focus. I look at the setup. The place that is closest to the front of the lens is right on the top. And what I will do is I'll magnify that field of area. I'll move the viewing position here. And you can see that there's a difference of sharpness of focus at the top edge and goes out of focus toward the back. I will move this a little further forward. I will magnify it at a higher level. And this little stand is a useful thing for you to get. You don't want to keep moving your camera setup. You don't want to move the tripod. You don't want to move the post. Moving the specimen is easy to do if you have what's called a laboratory jack. You can buy them on eBay, you can buy them used, you can buy them new. This was a used one, and that's all I have to do. I can now move this back and forth and examine what I think is the sharpest possible point. That looks as though it's the sharpest possible point. I will go to the full view. I'll make sure that I have the kind of lighting that I want. I have lighting on the edges, I have lighting on the top, I have lighting on the front. Nothing is burned out. I can get a usable image out of this setup. It may be not as aesthetic as I would like. I might spend a lot more time doing it if it wasn't a demonstration. The control box for this mechanism can be set for 2.5 millimeters. I'm going to do something a little smaller. I'm going to do 2 millimeters. I'm not going to go into the details of using this particular controller unit or other aspects of the mechanics. That can be done in another tutorial, or you can examine that kind of information in the user manual. I'm not going to take a shot until I sit down. Why is that? You don't have to do this ordinarily. I shoot on a concrete floor for my normal photographs. We are now on a wooden floor, and last night while I was trying to make this setup, I found that the beating of my heart jiggled the camera. This is a very wobbly floor. It has underlayment on it. You'd think that it would be stable enough, but for very high magnifications, I was using 10 micron increments for a photograph. That would allow the specimen to go in and out of focus. That's how small the depth of field was in the experiment last night. So I'm going to try to be as stationary as possible. I don't want my breathing to affect the movement of the specimen. In this case, the depth of field is so large, it's not going to matter. Let's start this off. In manual, the first thing I'll do is click the shutter. That's the very first starting position. From then on, I'm going to go in 2 millimeter increments. The lens I'm using is a Nikkor enlarging lens. It's fairly sharp. It's set at f8, the sharpest position for that lens. And I will just photograph this . The television monitor takes a longer time to refresh than the actual camera image on live view. For the purposes of this demonstration, we'll do this. And if you were close enough to the monitor, you would see how sharp focus would move across the top of the object that I'm showing. This is a crystal from Italy, and it's called Vesuvianite. The crystal is about 1.75 centimeters thick. There'd be about 10 to 12 images to get the complete thickness of the crystal. But remember, you're actually dealing with the diagonal depth of the object, not the front to back, because the very top of the object and the very bottom of the object, the furthest distance, is a diagonal in this orientation, and it is a little over the 2 centimeters thick. So I'll take several extra images, even though the back of the object can't be seen by the camera lens. Now you see that there's some dust that has landed on the top of the crystal face in the process of waiting for the stack to be finished. I probably will have to remove that in Photoshop. From the view of the monitor, it looks as though we have gone completely through the sequence of depth of field. Focus is now off from the object entirely. That's the end of the stack. We don't need any more images of this particular item.